The Galactic Council ship Stellar Observer moved through the black void without a sound. It drifted to a stop at the far edge of the star system. The Council had labeled Sol 3. Captain Tejo stood tall on the bridge, his 4 violet eyes fixed on the main screen. His slender fingers tapped against the smooth control panel as he studied the small blue planet. "Magnify," he ordered, his voice calm but tight with anticipation. The image grew larger. The blue sphere rotated slowly, wrapped in swirling white clouds and patches of green and brown. "So this is the infamous third planet," he murmured. "It doesn't look particularly threatening." Next to him, Science Officer Nari bent over her station. The blue glow from her screens reflected off her pale gray skin. She adjusted the controls with her 6-fingered hands, frowning at the data flowing across her display. "The readings are concerning, Captain." Her voice was soft but clear. "The gravity is crushing by our standards. The atmosphere contains oxygen, highly corrosive to most species. Temperature variations are extreme, from freezing to burning hot. And yet," she paused, looking up at Tejo, "the dominant species thrives there." "Humans," Tejo said, testing the unfamiliar word in his mouth. "What do we know about them?" Nari pressed more buttons on her console. "They evolved on a death world, Captain. By all rights, they should not exist. Their bodies are reinforced with internal calcium structures, bones, they call them. Their skin can repair itself. They can survive radiation, poison, extreme temperatures. And their history." Nari's voice trailed off. "Show me," Tejo ordered. The main screen changed. Images flashed before the bridge crew. Humans fighting with primitive weapons, then with increasingly deadly technology. Humans crossing vast oceans in tiny wooden vessels. Humans climbing the highest mountains on their planet. Humans diving into crushing ocean depths. Humans launching themselves into space with explosive chemicals. The bridge crew watched in silence, a mixture of horror and fascination on their faces. No one spoke for several minutes. "They kill each other," whispered Junior Officer Kihan from the back of the bridge. "For territory. For resources. For ideas." "Yes," Nari agreed. "But they also save each other. Look." She changed the display. Now they saw humans rushing into burning buildings to rescue others. Humans giving food to strangers. Humans working together to recover from natural disasters. First Officer Do-yeon moved closer to the captain. His skin was darker than Tejo's, with small ridges along his jawline marking his northern ancestry. "Should we make contact?" he asked. Tejo stared at the blue planet. In his long career, he had made first contact with 15 different species. None had evolved in conditions like this. None had displayed this strange mixture of violence and compassion. "The Council must decide," he said finally. "For now, we observe." For the next 2 cycles, the Stellar Observer remained hidden behind the outer planets. They watched human broadcasts, studied human languages, and mapped human settlements. The more they learned, the more divided the crew became. "They are dangerous," Security Chief Minkyu argued during the daily briefing. "Look at how quickly they advance their weapons technology. Look at how they dominate every other species on their planet." "They are beautiful," countered cultural specialist Jisoo. "Their art, their music, they create for the joy of creation. No other species does this the way they do." "They are both," Nari said quietly. "That's what makes them unique." The Council's orders arrived on the 9th day. No contact. The risk was too great. The humans were to be studied from a distance until more was known. Captain Tejo read the orders twice. He looked at the faces of his crew. Then he looked at the blue planet on the screen. "Prepare a transmission," he said finally. Do-yeon looked startled. "Captain, the Council's orders." "I am aware of the orders, First Officer. Prepare a transmission." The bridge fell silent. In 16 cycles of service, Captain Tejo had never disobeyed a direct order from the Council. "What should the message say, Captain?" Communications Officer Yuma asked, her fingers hovering over her console. A simple greeting. In their most common language. Identify us as visitors from another world. Ask if they would welcome contact. Yuna worked quickly, translating the message into what humans called English. When she was done, she looked up at Taijo. Ready, Captain. Taijo took a deep breath. Send it. The message traveled from the ship, across the emptiness of space, to the blue planet. The crew waited. Minutes passed, then hours. Perhaps their technology cannot detect our transmission, Do-Yun suggested. Perhaps they received it but do not understand it, Jisoo offered. Perhaps. Nari began, but was interrupted by a sharp sound from Yuna's station. Captain, Yuna exclaimed. We're receiving a response. The bridge erupted in excitement. Officers who had been dozing at their stations sat up straight. Those who had been off-duty rushed in. Put it on the main screen, Taijo ordered. The screen flickered. A human face appeared. Female, Taijo thought, based on their studies. She had dark skin and short black hair. She wore a blue uniform with small symbols on the collar. This is Commander Ria Patul of the United Earth Space Command, she said. Her voice was clear, her expression alert but calm. We receive your greeting with great interest. Our scanning systems detect your vessel near Saturn. We would welcome direct contact and offer our hospitality. Please respond with your intentions and requirements for safe approach. The bridge was silent again. The human wasn't showing fear. There was no panic in her voice, no sign of alarm that aliens had appeared in their system. They detected us, Minkyu said, his voice tight with concern. Their technology is more advanced than we thought. They're inviting us to approach, Jisoo said, her voice filled with wonder. They want to meet us. More messages arrived in quick succession. From different human governments, scientific institutions, even private citizens who had somehow detected the alien transmission, all expressing the same sentiment. Welcome. Come meet us. We are eager to know you. They should be afraid, Taijo murmured. Any rational species would be afraid. They're curious, Neri said. They've been searching the stars for other life. Finding us fulfills their oldest dream. Taijo studied the human faces on the screen. They were smiling. They were excited. Inform the council of our situation, he ordered Do-Yun. Tell them the humans have detected us and are requesting direct contact. Ask for new instructions. While they waited for the council's response, more human messages arrived. They sent information about their atmosphere, gravity, and biology to help the visitors prepare. They sent maps of safe landing zones. They sent images of meeting facilities being prepared. They're moving with remarkable speed, Nari observed. Their entire planet is mobilizing for first contact. When the council's response finally came, it was brief. Proceed with caution. Full protective protocols. Maintain ability to withdraw immediately if needed. Taijo sent their reply to the humans, accepting their invitation. The response was immediate. Cheering faces, congratulatory messages, detailed coordination plans. Set course for Earth, Taijo ordered. Standard approach vector. As the Stellar Observer moved toward the blue planet, Taijo watched the excited activity on the human channels. These strange creatures, born on a death world, shaped by violence and compassion in equal measure, were preparing to welcome visitors from the stars with open arms. The humans weren't afraid. They were excited. And that, Taijo realized, was perhaps the most terrifying thing about them. The grand reception hall on Galactic Council Station Prime sparkled with soft blue light. Hundreds of beings from across the known universe mingled, their bodies in all shapes and sizes. Some floated in hover tanks, others rolled on mechanical platforms. Many walked on 2 legs, 4 legs, or even more. Ambassador Juwu stood by the refreshment area, watching the scene with a slight smile. As Earth's 3rd ambassador to the Galactic Council, he had grown used to these events. But tonight was special. For the first time, A full human delegation had arrived at the station. "They are certainly noticeable," said Representative Minje as he glided up beside Juwu. The thin green tendrils that covered Minji's head quivered slightly as he spoke. His 4 eyes blinked in different patterns, a sign of stress in his species. Juwu followed Minji's gaze. In the center of the hall, several humans had set up what looked like a small cooking station. A chef in white was flipping food in a pan over an open flame, creating a small tower of fire that rose briefly before disappearing. Aliens gasped and moved back, then cautiously returned, drawn by curiosity. "They brought actual fire to a formal event," whispered Minje, his tendrils now quivering in disbelief. "It's called cooking," Juwu explained with a small smile. "Humans apply heat to their food before consuming it. Chef Bora is famous for her flame techniques." The council approved the demonstration. But fire had a diplomatic function. Minji's skin changed to a pale yellow, a clear sign of alarm. "We find it pleasant to eat warm food," Juwu said, "and the process of preparing it is considered an art form." "Your species continues to surprise us," Minji said, his color slowly returning to normal. "You evolved on a planet where fire was common, so you tamed it." "In a way," Juwu nodded. "Humans have always adapted to our environment by controlling it rather than avoiding it." Across the room, Commander Sunho, Earth's military attaché, was surrounded by a group of fascinated aliens. His broad shoulders and tall frame made him stand out among the mostly smaller council species. He was gesturing enthusiastically, showing something on a small screen to his audience. Juwu excused himself from Minje and moved closer to hear what Sunho was saying. "This is called base jumping," Sunho was explaining, showing a video of humans leaping off a tall cliff with what looked like fabric wings attached to their backs. "It's one of our more extreme sports. You intentionally jump from great heights for entertainment?" asked a horrified council member, whose name Juwu recalled was Daesum. Her crystalline body shimmered with pale light, a sign of emotional distress. "Skydiving. Sure. The rush is amazing." Sunho grinned broadly. "We've got plenty of extreme sports. Mountain climbing, deep sea diving, ultra-marathons through deserts. But the danger." Daesum's voice was higher now, her crystal body flashing with brighter pulses of light. "That's kind of the point," Sunho laughed, a warm, rich sound that caused several nearby aliens to step back in surprise. "The risk makes it exciting. The challenge makes it worthwhile." "Your species seeks out danger for pleasure?" asked another alien, this one covered in thick, blue fur. "Sometimes," Sunho admitted. "Not all humans enjoy extreme sports, but many of us like to test our limits. It helps us feel alive." The aliens exchanged glances with each other. Juwu had seen this reaction before, a mixture of horror, fascination, and a new emotion that was becoming common when aliens discussed humans, respect tinged with fear. Juwu moved through the crowd, greeting various dignitaries. He passed Dr. Mayang, Earth's chief medical officer, who was deep in conversation with several alien scientists. They were examining what appeared to be a new type of medical scanner, clearly modified from council technology, but with distinctly human elements. "The changes you've made to our healing devices are unexpected," one of the alien scientists was saying. "We designed them to work with stable biological patterns." "Human biology isn't always stable," Dr. Mayang explained patiently. "Our heart rates change. Our blood pressure fluctuates. We needed the scanners to adapt to those variations." "You made these modifications in less than 6 months," the alien said. "Our research team took 8 years to develop the original technology." Dr. Mayang shrugged modestly. "Necessity is the mother of invention. We had patients who needed help." The evening continued with more such interactions, humans explaining their customs, their technology, their ways of thinking to increasingly intrigued aliens. Juwu noted that the initial shock on the aliens' faces was often followed by thoughtful consideration. Some even seemed eager to try human foods or examine human gadgets more closely. As the reception began to wind down, Ju received a message on his communication device. The council had called an emergency session for the following morning. His presence was required. The next day, Ju entered the Grand Council chamber, a vast circular room with seating for representatives from over 300 worlds. The room was nearly full, unusual for a standard session. Whatever this meeting was about had drawn significant interest. High Counselor Yuna, a tall being with silvery skin and flowing white hair, sat at the center of the main platform. As the most senior member of the council, her words carried great weight. Beside her sat Security Director Haiyun, whose species resembled large insects with complex eye patterns and armored exoskeletons. This special session has been called to discuss the human integration progress, Yuma announced once everyone was seated. Director Haiyun will present her findings. Haiyun stood, her armor clicking softly as she moved to the central podium. The large display behind her lit up with various images. In the 6 months since formal relations were established with Earth, we have observed several concerning developments. Haiyun began, her voice calm but serious. The humans have already adapted our medical technology to work under Earth conditions. Their modifications are ingenious, if alarming. The screen showed images of council medical devices, followed by human versions, smaller, more rugged, clearly designed for harsh conditions. They have applied similar approaches to our communication systems, energy technology, and even recreational equipment. Haiyun continued. They adapt quickly and in ways we did not anticipate. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Ju remained expressionless, though he felt a small sense of pride. Humans were nothing if not adaptable. Most concerning are their martial capabilities, Haiyun said, changing the display. Now the screen showed images of human military exercises, soldiers running through obstacle courses, ships performing complex maneuvers, training simulations with multiple variables. They train by simulating failure conditions, Haiyun explained, pointing to one image where soldiers practiced while wearing equipment that limited their vision and mobility. They practice fighting while injured. They create scenarios where their technology fails, and they must improvise. High Counselor Yuna leaned forward, her silver face reflecting the light. Are they preparing for war, Director? The chamber fell silent. This was the question many had been afraid to ask directly. Since humans had joined the galactic community, there had been whispers about their potential for violence, their strange combination of friendliness and fierce protectiveness. No, Haiyun replied after a moment of consideration. Based on all our intelligence, they are not preparing for any specific conflict. They call it being prepared. It's simply how they think. Explain, Yuna requested. Humans evolved in an environment where threats could come at any time. Predators, natural disasters, resource scarcity. Their biology and psychology developed to anticipate problems before they occur, Haiyun said. They don't train for war. They train for survival under any conditions. Ju listened carefully. Haiyun's assessment was fair, he thought. Humans didn't want conflict with the council races, but they would always prepare for the unexpected. It was in their nature. And what of their rapid adoption of our technology? Another council member asked. They have advanced decades in months. Again, this appears to be a core trait, Haiyun answered. They see technology not as fixed, but as adaptable. Where we perfect a design before implementation, they release early versions and improve through iterations. The discussion continued for hours. Some council members expressed concern about human unpredictability. Others noted the benefits their adaptability might bring to the galactic community. Through it all, Ju listened, occasionally providing clarification about human intentions or customs. As the session ended, High Counselor Yuna approached him privately. Your species fascinates us, Ambassador, she said softly. You cook with fire, jump from heights for pleasure, and prepare for disasters that may never come. You are unlike any race we have encountered. We are simply human, Ju replied with a small smile. We adapt. We explore, we prepare. It's how we survived our world. And now you bring those traits to the stars, Eunice said, her silver eyes studying him carefully. I wonder what the galaxy will become with humans in it. Ju didn't have an answer for that, but as he left the council chamber, he noticed something interesting. Several alien representatives were gathered around Commander Sunno, asking more questions about human extreme sports. One was even cautiously requesting to try something called rock climbing under safe conditions. Perhaps adaptation worked both ways, he thought. Humans were changing by meeting alien species, and perhaps in small ways, the aliens were beginning to change by knowing humans. General Taewoo entered the emergency meeting room with quick, heavy steps. His normally neat uniform was wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He had not slept in 3 days. The large circular table in the center of the room was surrounded by representatives from 12 different species, all members of the Galactic Defense Committee. Taewoo did not sit down. Instead, he slammed his fist on the table with such force that several delegates jumped in surprise. The Vorax have attacked 3 more systems, he announced, his voice hard and tight. The Council forces are retreating on all fronts. The room fell completely silent. Taewoo looked around at the faces of the committee members. Some showed fear, others showed resignation. None showed hope. Show us the current situation, requested Delegate Bomi, her feathered crest flattening against her head in distress. Taewoo nodded and activated the large holographic display in the center of the table. A 3-dimensional map of this section of the galaxy appeared, with red markers showing Vorax-controlled systems. There were far too many red markers. 1 month ago, we detected the first Vorax scout ships, Taewoo explained, pointing to the edge of the map. 2 weeks ago, their main fleet arrived. Since then, they have taken 17 systems and destroyed the defenses of 12 more. How many casualties? Asked Councillor Minho, his voice quiet but steady. The elderly diplomat's blue skin had paled to almost white with stress. Nearly 9 billion. Taewoo replied grimly. Most civilians. The Vorax don't take prisoners. Horrified murmurs filled the room. Scientist Ji stood up from her seat. The slender, 6-armed researcher pulled up additional data on her personal screen and transferred it to the main display. Their biology makes them formidable, she explained. The Vorax function as a hive mind. Each individual is connected to all others within their fleet. They share information instantly and can coordinate complex maneuvers without communication delays. Their ships are partially organic, she continued, showing images of the strange, asymmetrical vessels. They can repair damage quickly and adapt to our weapons. Their tactics are overwhelming our conventional defenses. Can we negotiate with them? Asked a representative from the Pelori, a normally peaceful species known for their diplomatic skills. Ji shook her head. We've tried. They don't respond to any communication attempts. From what we've observed, they consider all other life forms as simply resources to be consumed. The room fell silent again as the committee members absorbed this information. The situation seemed hopeless. The Council's united forces, which had maintained peace in the galaxy for centuries, were being systematically destroyed by an enemy they could not understand or counter. Earth has offered assistance, Councillor Minho said quietly, breaking the silence. Their fleet stands ready. They have 20 warships that could deploy immediately. The room erupted in argument. Committee members spoke over each other, voices rising in both support and alarm. We cannot unleash the humans, shouted Delegate Curran, his eye stalks waving in agitation. Have you seen their combat simulations? Their concept of warfare is barbaric. What choice do we have? Countered Representative Somi. The Vorax will reach the core worlds in weeks at their current pace. The humans are unpredictable, argued another delegate. If we give them military authority, who knows what they might do? Better to face one potential problem than certain extinction, said Minho calmly. The debate continued, growing more heated. Some delegates presented logical arguments about the risks of involving humans in galactic warfare. Others spoke from fear, citing Earth's violent history and the humans' strange comfort with conflict. A few argued passionately for accepting human help, pointing out that all other options had failed. General Taewoo stood silently, watching the argument unfold. As the commanding officer of the Council's United Defense Forces, he had fought the Vorax directly. He had seen his best ships torn apart by the enemy's strange, organic weapons. He had watched skilled crews with centuries of training fall to the Vorax's perfectly coordinated attacks. He had also studied human military history and observed their training exercises. What other species saw as barbaric, he recognized as something else entirely, effectiveness born from necessity. The debate ended abruptly when an emergency alert sounded throughout the room. The holographic display flickered and changed to show a new attack in progress. "The Vorax have launched an assault on Proxima Centauri," announced the automated emergency system. Heavy fighting reported around the human colony. Civilian evacuation in progress. Every face turned to look at Taewoo. The general's expression darkened. "The humans didn't wait for our permission," he said simply. "They're engaging the Vorax now." For the next 3 days, the Defense Committee remained in emergency session, receiving updates from the front. The news was sparse and often confusing. Human communication methods during combat were different from Council protocols. Their battle language was direct, sometimes crude, and focused entirely on results rather than procedures. What was clear, however, was that the humans were not retreating. Unlike the Council forces, which had been falling back system by system, the human fleet had moved directly toward the Vorax attackers. On the 3rd day, General Taewoo received a priority communication. He read it silently, his expression unreadable. The committee members watched him anxiously. Reports from the front. Taewoo announced finally, "The human response has been swift, efficient, and utterly devastating. The Vorax fleet at Proxima Centauri is in full retreat." Disbelief filled the room. No one had successfully driven back the Vorax since they had appeared. "Show us," demanded Delegate Curran, who had been most vocal against human involvement. Taewoo activated the main display again. This time, it showed real-time footage from the battle zone. A large human battleship designated Indomitable moved with precision through a field of debris, the remains of Vorax vessels. Smaller human ships worked alongside it, some continuing to pursue retreating enemy vessels, others rescuing survivors from damaged ships of all species. "What happened?" asked Juhai, leaning forward to study the footage. "How did they defeat the hive mind coordination?" "They call it controlled aggression," Counselor Minho explained, reading from a report he had just received. "The humans analyzed the Vorax communication patterns and found a weakness. The hive mind requires perfect coordination. The humans intentionally created chaos." "Chaos," repeated Bomi, confused. "Unpredictable attack patterns," Minho clarified. "Random maneuvers, deliberate misinformation. They did exactly what the Vorax couldn't anticipate or counter. And they're very, very good at it." The committee watched as the human ships continued their rescue operations with the same efficiency they had shown in battle. They were methodical, organized, and surprisingly gentle with the wounded of all species. "They're recovering survivors from Vorax ships as well," noted Jai, pointing to a section of the display. "They're treating enemy wounded." "That makes no tactical sense," said Curran, his eye stalks now drooping in confusion. "It makes perfect human sense," said Minho with a small smile. "They fight with devastating force, then help all who survive. It's part of their military code." The committee continued to watch the rescue operations in silence. For many, this was their first time seeing humans in actual combat rather than training exercises. The reality was both more frightening and more reassuring than they had imagined. "We've been monitoring human communications during the battle," General Taewoo said after a while. "They've already developed new tactics based on what they learned. They're adapting their weapons to better counter Vorax biology, and they're sharing all this information with our forces. Why would they share their advantages? Asked a delegate from the back of the room. Because they don't see this as their fight alone, Minho explained. They see it as our fight. All of us together, against a common threat. Scientist G had been quiet for some time, studying the data from the battle. Now she looked up at her colleagues, her expression thoughtful. Perhaps, she said softly, we have been fearing the wrong thing about humans all along. What do you mean? Asked Bomi. We feared their capacity for violence, Jai explained. Their comfort with conflict, their willingness to prepare for the worst. But those are exactly the qualities we need to face the Vorax. On the display, the Indomitable Asterisk had deployed medical shuttles to help wounded from a damaged council ship. Human rescue teams in environmental suits moved through space, retrieving survivors who had been thrown from their vessels during the battle. The humans don't just know how to fight, Jihai continued. They know why they fight, not for conquest or resources, but to protect, to save lives, even the lives of their enemies when possible. General Taewoo nodded slowly. I fought alongside many species in my career, he said. The humans are unique. They hate war, yet excel at it. They train constantly for conflicts they hope will never come. And when those conflicts do come, he gestured to the display, where the Indomitable Asterisk was now coordinating the defense of the entire system, organizing both human and council ships into a new formation. When those conflicts come, he finished, we should be very grateful that humans are on our side. The emergency session of the Galactic Defense Committee continued long into the night, as they discussed how best to integrate human forces into the wider defense against the Vorax. The debate was no longer about whether to accept human help, but how to work alongside them effectively. And throughout the galaxy, as news of the victory at Proxima Centauri spread, people of all species looked to the stars with a new emotion, hope. The command center of the Joint Galactic Defense Fleet aboard the starship Unbreakable Asterisk hummed with activity. Officers from 7 different species moved with purpose between stations. Screens displayed star maps, fleet positions, and real-time battle data from a dozen fronts. At the center of it all stood Admiral Chunho. Unlike many of the officers around him who showed signs of stress, the Admiral's posture remained relaxed, his movements deliberate. His dark uniform bore the insignia of Earth Command alongside the new symbol of the Joint Fleet, a shield with stars representing the Allied worlds. Admiral, the Vorax fleet has changed course again, reported a Triaxian officer, her scaled skin shimmering under the lights. Junho nodded and stepped to the main tactical display. Representatives from the 7 major military forces gathered around him. The holographic map showed the positions of both Allied and enemy fleets. Red markers representing Vorax ships were moving in patterns that seemed random at first glance. The Vorax main force is moving toward the Arcturus sector, he explained, pointing to the largest cluster of red markers. Their secondary fleets are targeting these supply routes. His finger traced lines between Allied worlds. They're adapting to our tactics. The alien officers exchanged worried glances. For 3 months, the Joint Fleet had been fighting the Vorax across 20 systems. Initial victories had given way to a more complex struggle as the enemy learned and evolved. The Vorax collective mind is analyzing our battle patterns, said the Eldari representative, his crystal body pulsing with blue light. They predict our responses with increasing accuracy. So we must adapt faster, said Tactical Officer Suman. The young human woman stepped forward confidently. Before the war, she had been a game designer on Earth. Now her ability to think in multiple scenarios made her invaluable. Suman gestured to the holographic display, zooming in on a particular sector. We've incorporated human flanking maneuvers with Triaxian speed capabilities, she explained. Her hands moved through the hologram, showing ships in formation. The Eldari defensive formations will provide cover, while American stealth vessels will disrupt their communications here and here. The alien officers studied the proposal. Most nodded in approval, but Commander Kaler of the Pelori hesitated. The human concept of improvisation is difficult for my people, he admitted. The Pelori were known for their methodical, carefully planned approach to everything from cooking to combat. Our ship captains trained to follow precise protocols. Junho smiled. It was a genuine expression, not forced or diplomatic. That's why we train together, Commander. You teach us stability. We teach you flexibility. He turned to address the entire group. The Vorax think as one mind. That's their strength, but also their weakness. They expect the same from us. Unified, predictable responses. Instead, we will give them 7 different species thinking in 7 different ways, supporting each other's strengths. The meeting continued for another hour as they refined the battle plan. When it concluded, the alien officers returned to their ships to prepare their crews. Suman stayed behind, working on simulation models with her team. Admiral Chunho moved to the observation window. Beyond the reinforced glass, space stretched black and endless, dotted with distant stars. Somewhere out there, the Vorax fleets were moving, hunting, adapting. The enemy had seemed unstoppable when they first appeared 6 months ago. Now they faced something they had never encountered before, a coalition that grew stronger rather than weaker with each battle. "Admiral," said a quiet voice behind him. It was Jiu, the diplomatic liaison assigned to the fleet. "The Council is requesting an update on our strategy." Shunho nodded. "Tell them we're implementing Phase 3. Multiple independent actions coordinated through Central Command, but executed with local decision-making authority. They may not understand what that means," Jiu said carefully. "Then explain it to them as you've explained so many human concepts before," Junho replied with a small smile. "Sometimes the best way to win isn't to be stronger or faster, but to be unpredictable." Across the galaxy, the influence of human military thinking was spreading rapidly. Species that had relied on overwhelming numbers now learned the value of small, elite strike teams. Cultures that depended on superior technology discovered the importance of backup systems and manual overrides. Civilizations that had forgotten the concept of sacrifice were reminded that sometimes the few must risk everything to save the many. On the planet Triax, young warriors trained in something they called human thinking, the ability to question orders when circumstances changed. In the Eldari crystal cities, military planners studied Earth history, particularly the stories of outnumbered forces defeating superior enemies through creativity and determination. Even the Pelori, with their 1,000-year tradition of perfect formation flying, were learning to allow individual ship captains more autonomy in battle. It was uncomfortable for them, against their nature, but they adapted because they had seen the results. 3 weeks after the strategy meeting on the Unbreakable Asterisk, the Vorax suffered their first major defeat at the Battle of Arcturus. Their main fleet, expecting a direct confrontation with the joint forces, instead found themselves attacked from multiple directions by smaller, faster ships using tactics they could not predict. 2 months later, the tide of war had clearly turned. The Vorax, still dangerous, were now on the defensive. They had lost nearly a third of their fleet and were retreating from previously conquered systems. That was when their leadership made a fatal decision. "Admiral," called out the sensor operator, her voice tight with alarm. "We're detecting a massive Vorax fleet movement. They've abandoned their defensive positions in the outer rim." "Show me," Chunho ordered, moving quickly to the main display. The tactical map updated to show hundreds of Vorax ships converging from different directions. Their destination was clear. "They're heading for Sol," Suman said, her face pale. "They're targeting Earth." The command center fell silent. Everyone understood the significance. The Vorax had analyzed their defeats and identified what they believed was the source of the Alliance's strength: the humans. In their hive mind logic, removing Earth would cripple the resistance. "Alert all ships," Junho said calmly. "Implement emergency protocol homeworld." Across the joint fleet, the order was received and acknowledged. Ships changed course, battle groups were formed, supply vessels accelerated to rendezvous points. The response was immediate and coordinated in a way that would have been impossible months earlier. Junho opened a channel to the Council. The Vorax are launching an all-out attack on the Sol system. They expect to strike at humanity's heart and cripple our alliance. Request permission to implement full defensive measures. The Council's response came swiftly, a simple, unanimous agreement. For once, there was no debate, no hesitation. The galaxy had learned what happened when the Vorax attacked human territory. 4 days later, the Vorax attack force arrived at the outer edge of the Sol system. Their sensors detected human defenses, substantial but seemingly manageable. What they failed to detect were the fleets of every allied species positioned strategically throughout the system, hidden behind planets, moons, and asteroid fields. When the Vorax committed to their attack vector, the trap was sprung. Allied ships emerged from hiding places. Defense platforms activated. The Sol system, which had appeared vulnerable, was revealed to be the most heavily defended sector in the galaxy. The battle lasted for 27 hours. It spread from the orbit of Neptune to the asteroid belt. At times, the fighting was so intense that observers on Mars could see the flashes of weapons fire like new stars being born and dying in the night sky. When it was over, the Vorax fleet was in ruins. Their remaining ships retreated in disarray, their hive mind connection disrupted by specialized Eldari weapons developed with human guidance. On the bridge of the unbreakable asterisk, which had led the Central Defense Force, Admiral Junho gathered his officers for a brief moment of acknowledgement. They were exhausted but standing tall. Human and alien alike, they had fought together as one force, but with the strength of their differences. They made a critical error, Junho told his officers as the battle concluded. His voice was tired but satisfied. They thought our planet made us weak. They didn't understand it made us strong. A Triaxian officer tilted her head in question. I don't understand, Admiral. Earth is harsh by galactic standards, Junho explained. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, powerful storms, tectonic activity. For millennia, we thought these were challenges to overcome. Now we know they were gifts. They made us adaptable, resilient, creative. He looked around at the alien faces that had become his trusted comrades. And now we share those gifts with all of you, as you share your strengths with us. As the unbreakable asterisk set course to pursue the retreating Vorax, the news of the victory at Sol spread throughout Allied space. For many species, it marked a turning point, not just in the war, but in their understanding of humans. The creatures from the harsh blue planet were indeed dangerous, as many had feared. But that danger was now a shield for the galaxy, not a threat. And behind their strength in battle was something even more surprising, a fierce dedication to protecting all life, not just their own. The Vorax would continue to fight, but after the Battle of Sol, few doubted the outcome. The hive mind had met something it could not understand or overcome, different minds thinking differently, yet united in purpose. And at the center of this new way of fighting stood the humans, the species that had transformed from curiosity to ally to essential defender in less than a standard galactic year. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council shone in the morning light. The building had been rebuilt after the war, larger and more beautiful than before. Tall crystal windows let in streams of sunlight that painted colorful patterns on the marble floor. The chamber was filled with representatives from over 100 different species. Some floated in bubbles of special air. Others stood on mechanical platforms. Many sat in seats designed for their unique bodies. At the center of the vast circular chamber, a new emblem hung from the ceiling. The blue-green planet, third from its star, surrounded by a protective ring of stars. Every being in the hall knew what it meant. Earth, the world that had changed everything. Diplomat Haniel stood with the human delegation, dressed in the formal blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Though he appeared calm, he felt a mixture of pride and humility as he looked around the great chamber. 10 years ago, humans had been newcomers to the galactic community, viewed with fascination and fear. Now they were essential members of the Council, respected and, in many cases, deeply admired. High Counselor Jiu stepped to the central podium. Once Earth's third ambassador to the Council, she had risen to lead the entire organization after the war. Her silver hair was pulled back in a simple style, and she wore the formal white robes of her office. The chamber fell silent as she raised her hands. "Friends, colleagues, fellow citizens of our great galactic community," she began, her voice clear and strong. 10 cycles have passed since the defeat of the Vorax. 10 cycles of peace, secured by our united efforts. She turned to look directly at the human delegation. And by the courage of Earth. A wave of approving sounds moved through the chamber. Different species had different ways of showing agreement. Some clicked, some hummed, some flashed colors from their skin or fur. But the meaning was clear. Acknowledgement and gratitude. Annual inclined his head modestly as Jiu gestured toward him. "We did what anyone would do to protect their home," he said simply. A ripple of what could only be described as knowing laughter passed through the chamber. Everyone present understood that humans' definition of home had expanded to include the entire galaxy. During the war, human forces had fought just as fiercely to defend alien worlds as they had to protect Earth itself. This had surprised many species and changed how they viewed humans forever. "Today, we mark not just the anniversary of victory," Jiu continued, "but the formal adoption of a new approach to galactic security. The protective doctrine has been finalized after years of careful development." The main display screens around the chamber activated, showing complex diagrams of interlocking defensive systems, training protocols, and emergency response plans. Earth's defense forces will train and coordinate with all member species, Jiu explained. Knowledge will be shared. Technologies will be developed jointly. The third planet stands as guardian of us all, but not alone, as the center of a network that includes all our worlds. Representatives from across the chamber stood to signal their support. The vote that followed was unanimous, something almost unheard of in Council history. Haniel watched with quiet satisfaction. The doctrine represented years of diplomatic work, carefully balancing the concerns of those who still felt nervous about human military power with the practical needs of galactic defense. As the formal session concluded, delegates broke into smaller groups, discussing the implications of the new doctrine and sharing news from their homeworlds. Haniel found himself surrounded by representatives seeking to speak with him. Though he had been Earth's lead diplomat for 5 years now, he still sometimes felt overwhelmed by the attention humans received. He noticed a young Triaxian diplomat hovering at the edge of the group, clearly wanting to speak, but hesitant to push forward. Triaxians were reptilian in appearance, with iridescent scales and large, thoughtful eyes. This one was smaller than most, probably new to her diplomatic role. Haniel politely excused himself from the group and approached her. "Hello there. I don't believe we've met. I'm Haniel, Earth's diplomatic lead." The Triaxian bowed slightly, her scales shifting to a bluish tint, a sign of respect in her culture. "I am Neri, Junior Diplomatic Attaché from Triax Prime. It is an honor to meet you, Diplomat Haniel." "The honor is mine," Haniel replied with a warm smile. "How can I help you today?" Neri seemed to gather her courage. "I hope you do not find this question inappropriate," she said carefully. "But is it true that humans still fear things, despite all your strength?" The question surprised Haniel. After years of diplomatic service, he thought he had heard every possible question about humans. But this was new. "Of course we do," he answered honestly. "We fear failing those who depend on us. We fear losing what we love. We fear pain and death, just like most species. But in battle, during the war, Neri's scales shifted to a confused yellow pattern. Your kind faced the Vorax without hesitation. Human soldiers ran toward danger when others ran away." Haniel considered how to explain. "Fear doesn't disappear just because we're good at fighting," he said. "We simply act despite it." "But how?" How do you overcome such fears? We don't. Hanul replied simply. That's what courage is. Not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important than fear. The Triaxian's eyes widened slightly. This is not how courage is understood on my world. We believe true warriors feel no fear at all. That's not courage, Hanul said gently. That's just not understanding the danger. Real courage acknowledges the risk and moves forward anyway. Neri was quiet for a moment, absorbing this idea. Around them, the Great Hall continued to buzz with conversation. Representatives from 100 worlds discussing trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific collaborations, all the business of a peaceful galactic community. Perhaps, Neri said finally, that is what the universe truly feared about Earth all along. Not your strength, but your willingness to be strong for others, to feel fear but act anyway. Hanul hadn't thought of it that way before, but the young diplomat's words rang true. Humans hadn't won the respect of the galaxy simply by being good fighters. Many species had powerful militaries. What had set humans apart was their willingness to fight as fiercely for allies as for themselves. Come, Hanul said, let me introduce you to some of my colleagues. We're organizing a cultural exchange program with Triax Prime next cycle. As they walked through the Great Hall, Hanul looked out at the assembled representatives of 100 worlds, all living together in a peace that had seemed impossible just years before. Species that had once been bitter enemies now collaborated on scientific research. Cultures that had been isolated for millennia now shared art and music with each other. And at the center of it all was Earth, once feared for its strange, violent children, now valued for the same qualities that had once caused concern. Maybe that's why we were needed, he said softly, more to himself than to Neri. And why we'll always be here. The young Triaxian looked up at him curiously, not quite catching his words, but she didn't need to understand. She, like all the younger diplomats coming up through the ranks, had grown up in a galaxy where humans were not a curiosity or a threat, but essential allies and friends. Later that day, as the council session resumed, Hanul watched High Counselor Jiu present the final component of the protective doctrine, an educational initiative that would bring students from every world to Earth for training and send human teachers throughout the galaxy. The future of our community depends not just on shared defense, Jiu told the assembly, but on shared understanding. The strength of humanity is not in their weapons or their tactics, but in their perspective, their ability to face the harshest challenges and find a way forward. Hanul thought about all that had changed in the decades since the war. Humans had gone from being newcomers in the galaxy to its central defenders. But more importantly, human ideas had spread. The value of diversity, the strength found in overcoming fear, the importance of protecting not just your own kind, but all kinds. When the Vorax had first attacked, many council species had questioned whether humans belonged in their peaceful community. Now that community existed largely because of human influence. The greatest victory, Hanul realized, wasn't defeating the Vorax. It was what came after, teaching a galaxy it had known only rigid order or chaotic conflict that there was a middle path. Flexible strength, principled adaptation, courage that acknowledged fear but wasn't ruled by it. As the session ended, Hanul joined a group of diplomats heading to a reception. Representatives from species that had once been terrified of humans now walked alongside them as colleagues and friends. Children of a dozen worlds played together in the council gardens, learning each other's games and languages. "We've come a long way," said an older diplomat walking beside him, one who remembered the early days of human contact. "We have," Hanul agreed, "but we still have far to go." He looked up at the emblem of Earth hanging in the council chamber. The blue-green third planet, once feared, now central to everything. That was the greatest irony of all, he thought. The qualities that had made the universe fear humans were the same qualities that now protected it. And in teaching others to understand those qualities, humans had found their true purpose among the stars. Not conquerors, not warriors, but teachers and protectors, helping a galaxy learn that the harshest worlds often produced the strongest hearts.